We have known Rizal for his bravery and his works that inspires a lot of Filipinos. But before Rizal became our national hero, he also had struggles and experiences, and we are about to discuss about it. Let us go through his education and travel. Nearly 16 years old, Rizal took philosophy and letters at University of Santo Tomas, April 1877. After finishing the first year in philosophy and letters, he transferred to a medical course. His studies continued in UST until he was unhappy at the Dominican institution for the racial prejudice against Filipino students. After finishing the fourth year of his medical course in UST, Rizal decided to complete his studies in Spain. He was also on a secret mission to keenly observe the system and culture of Europe to prepare himself for liberating his oppressed people from the Spanish tyranny. Rizal's departure for Spain was kept secret to avoid detection by the Spanish authorities and the friars. On May 3, 1882, Rizal departed on board the Spanish steamer Salvadora bound for Singapore using the name of his cousin from Biñan, Jose Mercado. The Salvadora docked at Singapore on May 9, 1882. Rizal stayed for 2 days in the city, which at that time was a colony of England. After staying for 2 days in Singapore, Rizal left for Europe on May 11, 1882. On May 17, 1882, he reached Point Gale, a seacoast town in southern Ceylon, which is now called Sri Lanka, and arrived at Colombo the following day. The voyage went through the Suez Canal and arrived at Port Said after 5 days. On June 11, 1882, Rizal reached Naples, an Italian city. Jose Rizal docked at the French harbor of Marseilles on the evening of June 12 and stayed for 2.5 days. In the afternoon of May 15, 1882, Rizal left Marseilles by train for the last lap of his trip to Spain. Rizal finally reached Barcelona on June 16, 1882. Rizal left Barcelona in the fall of 1882 and established himself in Madrid, the capital of Spain, Ramblas, which was the famous street in Barcelona. Rizal enrolled in the Universidad Central de Madrid, which is the Central University of Madrid, in 2 courses, medicine and philosophy and letters. Rizal studied painting and sculpture at the Academy of Fine Arts of San Fernando. He spent his leisure time reading and writing, attending the reunions of Filipino students, and practicing fencing and shooting at the gymnasium. Rizal economized on his living expenses, and with the money he saved, he purchased books from a second-hand bookstore owned by a certain Señor Roses. After completing his studies in Spain, Rizal went to Paris and Germany for his specialization in ophthalmology. Rizal stayed in Paris for about 4 months and worked as an apprentice of Dr. Louis de Weckert, who was then a leading French ophthalmologist. After acquiring enough experience in the clinic of Dr. Weckert on February 1, 1886, Rizal left Paris to go to Germany. He arrived in Heidelberg, a historic city in Germany famous for its old university and romantic surroundings, on February 3, 1886. He worked at the University Eye Hospital under the direction of Dr. Otto Becker and attended the lectures of Dr. Becker and Professor Wilhelm Kuhne at the university. On August 9, 1886, Rizal left in the city of Heidelberg. He boarded a train and visited various cities of Germany until arriving in Leipzig on August 14, 1886. Rizal corrected some chapters in his second novel during his stay. To earn money, he worked as a proofreader in a publishing firm. Rizal left Leipzig to set course on Dresden on October 29, 1886. He stayed only 2 days in the city.
In the morning of November 1, Rizal left Dresden by train, reaching Berlin in the evening. He had to at some point live in poverty because Rizal was not able to receive money from his brother. Rizal's first novel, Noli Me Tangere, was published with the help of Maximo Viola, who gave him the necessary funds. Rizal was suspected to be a French spy due to him having no passport. On March 21, 1887, the Noli Me Tangere came off the printing press. Let's proceed to Grand Tour of Europe. After the publication of Noli Me Tangere, Rizal planned to visit the important places in Europe. Rizal received his money from Pasiano worth 1,000 pesos and he immediately paid Viola the sum of 300 pesos from his kind loan. At dawn of May 11, 1887, Rizal and Viola left Berlin by train. Rizal and Viola spent some time in Dresden. At 1:30 p.m. of May 13, 1887, the train with Rizal and Viola on board arrived at the railroad station of Lake Moritz, Bohemia. On May 16 at 9:45 a.m., Rizal and Viola left Lake Moritz by train. Next stop is Prague. After their stay at Lake Moritz, Rizal together with Viola visited the city of Prague. After their stay at the home of the Wilcombs, Rizal and Viola left Prague and went to Bonn. Let's proceed to the Queen of the Danube. On May 20, Rizal and Viola arrived in the beautiful Vienna. Rizal and Viola presented a letter of recommendation from Blumentritt to Nordenfels, one of the greatest novelists in Europe during that time. Next is Linz. On May 24, Rizal and Viola left Vienna on a river boat to see the beautiful sights of the Danube Riviera. The river voyage ended in Linz. They traveled overland to Salzburg and from there to Munich. From Munich, they went to Nuremberg, an old city of Germany. From Ulm, they went to Stuttgart, Baden, and then Rheinfall. Next is Switzerland. From Rheinfall, they crossed the frontier to Schaffhausen, Switzerland. They stayed in this city from June 2 to 3, 1887, and then continued their tour to Basel, Bern, and Lausanne. After sightseeing in Lausanne, Rizal and Viola left on the little boat, crossing the foggy Lemon Lake to Geneva. Next is Geneva. Rizal and Viola visited Geneva, which is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. On June 23, they parted ways. Viola decided to return to Barcelona while Rizal continued his tour to Italy. Let's proceed to Italy. Rizal went to Italy and visited Turin, Milan, Venice, and Florence. On June 27, 1887, he reached Rome. After a week of staying in Rome, he prepared to return to the Philippines. Next is Rizal's first homecoming. Rizal returned to Manila in August 1887. His homecoming was met by the friars' furor over Noli Me Tangere. The Archbishop of Manila issued an order banning the possession and reading of the novel. Rizal was coerced to leave Manila for Hong Kong 6 months later to avoid further persecution. Next stop is Hong Kong. From Hong Kong, Rizal traveled to Macau and Japan before going to America. Entering San Francisco, California in April 1888, he visited the states of Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Nebraska, Illinois, and New York. Lastly, Rizal came back in Europe once again. Rizal arrived in England in May 1888. Jose Rizal was admitted to the British Museum and devoted his time reading all the sources on Philippine history that he could find. From 1888 to 1890, he shuttled between London and Paris, where he wrote ethnographic and history-related studies as well as political articles. He also frequently visited Spain, where he met with fellow Filipino intellectuals like Marcelo H. del Pilar, Mariano Ponce, and Graciano Lopez Haina. In March 1891, Rizal finished writing his second novel, El Filibusterismo, in France. He planned to publish the book in Belgium but was financially hard up. In September 1890, El Filibusterismo was published in Ghent using donations from Rizal's friends. A rivalry had ensued between Rizal and Del Pilar over the leadership of the Asociación Hispano-Filipino in Spain. Rizal decided to leave Europe to avoid a worsening rift between the Rizalistas and Pilaristas and to help maintain unity among Filipino expatriates. After staying for some time in Hong Kong, Rizal came home to the Philippines in June 1892.